On 12th of November 2023, part of an under construction tunnel collapsed in the Indian hill state of Uttarakhand, trapping 41 workers. What followed was over a 2 week long rescue operation that has been described as no less than a miracle. Those involved in the operation included Professor Arnold Dix, who has joined me here today. Hello, guys. I am Annu Kaushik and Professor. Welcome to my YouTube channel, Justin by Annu.
Thank you for having me, Annu.
My pleasure.
Namaste. Sorry. Namaste, Annu.
Namaste to you too. So, I'll begin by asking you now, this Uttarakhand tunnel rescue has been described as one of the most remarkable rescue operations in recent times. So, what factors contributed to making this mission a success?
Well, firstly, no one was dead. So right from the beginning, we had everybody alive. That itself is miracle number one. Because normally, in fact, always, in my experience, even if some people are alive, already from the beginning, some people will be dead. So that's amazing. The next thing was the response of the government. So the response of the Uttarakhand government, the response of the central government, the coordination of all the agencies. I think that's miracle number two, if there was going to be two miracles, because in my experience, normally when there's an event of this severity, and this is severe because we've got a Himalayan mountain collapsing, 41 people trapped, not obvious how we're going to rescue the people. Usually, well, in every case I've been involved, people start fighting one another, but they didn't. Here, what I found was a quite exceptional harmony amongst all the different agencies, all the different levels of government, all the different rescue organisations, everything from the Prime Minister's department right through to the local government, all sitting in the same room, talking with each other. It's amazing. So there's the second miracle. The third one was the openness with which volunteers were greeted and welcomed, of which I'm one. And there's miracle number three, because often people, when they've got a big problem, they're very internally focused. But actually, this was a very open environment, so much so that even in our meetings, no matter how stressed we were, the language spoken just for me was English. Can you believe that? I mean, I'm in India. I'm just a guest. And out of respect, people are talking in English, which is probably their third language. There'd be their local language, Hindi, and then probably English. So there's miracle number three. Miracle number four, we got everyone out. Like, hello, like, pinch me. And no one got hurt. So I don't know of any other example like this ever.
Now, as you write,
pretty big. It's a series of. That's like a lot of miracles all in one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, as you rightly said, you closely worked with Indian agencies. So, what lessons do you think the world can learn from the Indian agencies that were involved in this rescue operation?
Well, firstly, I can tell you some of the lessons I learned.
Yeah.
I learned not only does India have its own special dances at Bollywood and things like that, they have their own unique way of problem solving. And that means that when a group of experts are in the same room and we're all working together, there's a uniquely Indian way of problem solving. And in the beginning, it was like, what is happening here? Because we've got all these people in the same room. Say there's 20 of us. Say you include me. So say it's 20 people in the room. 19 of them are speaking and I'm watching. I'm going, what is happening here? Because everyone is talking. And then I realized that there's a special way of problem solving in India, which I was a part of and I got to actually immerse myself in, which is like a combination of a workshop, a discussion, sharing ideas. And then all of a sudden, a consolidated thought comes out of the group, and then we discuss that, and then we take action. So the lesson that I think for the rest of the world, and the lesson that I learned, was there's also a miracle in the decision-making process, this incredible democratic, every voice gets listened to at the same time sometimes. Like I couldn't quite work out how it was happening. And then we come to a collective decision very efficiently. So the rigid way of decision-making and problem-solving that I often find in other countries, which is a very, very structured, like I'm the boss, you do what you're told, I'll listen to what you say, then I'm going to make a decision. It wasn't. It was actually this very inclusive, democratic, collective decision-making amongst where everyone's voice was listened to and respected, and then we came to a collective decision. And I think there's a lesson in that because we made decisions in a dynamic way as the circumstances changed, as the mountain taught us, for example, that we were wrong, which was the common lesson on a daily basis. Like we'd have what we thought was a brilliant idea. We'd go and try and do it. Later that day, we'd discover, no, it's not going to work. So we could either take that as a failure, which of course some people were saying we were failing, or what we did as a group was say, okay, we've learnt something. Now let's take that learning, put it back into our group, and let's then do our special decision-making dance and then come up with another idea. And I think that's a lesson for the world. It's a lesson about cooperation, the way the army worked with us. So you've got a whole organisation who are used to a very strong command and control regime, because they're an army, like that's how they work, working in harmony with civilian organisations. And I mean in harmony, like soldiers looking like soldiers, but behaving like sweet butter wouldn't melt in their mouth, like just part of the team. I mean, I wouldn't want to make them angry because obviously they're soldiers and they know how to behave like soldiers, but they weren't behaving in that military style. They were behaving in that collective problem-solving style, which I was just blown away by that. And also the acceptance of volunteers. It wasn't just me. There were other volunteers. For example, there's a gentleman, and I can't find his name, who designed and built the little cart that we put all the rocks in when we did the final mining stage. He's just a volunteer. And so he and I are down there in the welding shop designing the little cart and building the little cart for the rocks. He's a volunteer. He didn't expect to be paid. He was there to help. I was there to help. And somehow we were all integrated within the team. I think there's a lesson there as well. It was, upon reflection, quite a therapeutic experience. Not, for arguably the world's most potentially terrible disaster of the year, if you leave aside the ones we do to each other intentionally. So leave the insane human beings behaving horribly to one another disasters to one side and just look at the natural ones. This is a natural one that could have been up there as one of the worst for 2023, and it turns out magnificently. So I think that's a wonderful thing.
Yes. So it means a teamwork in true sense. And those are some really interesting insights.
Yeah.
Now, what was the most difficult part of this rescue operation?
I think so technically it was incredibly difficult because, as you either know or soon you will know, the avalanche hadn't actually ever stopped. It was actually continuing while we were doing the rescue operation, and the area that we were having to work through had grown by about 20% in length. And we were constantly monitoring and concerned that we might have an acceleration of that and a major collapse, which could have affected the people who were on the rescue side and us doing the rescuing. So we all could have got involved in a major collapse. So I think knowing, and we knew that, and so holding that thought and knowing what is at the moment a rescue operation, but at any moment it could turn into a disaster because actually all of us could end up, in trouble. And at the same time, maintaining a calm and it's like a collective good heart. Everyone's saying 41 people are going to be rescued. No one's going to get hurt. And as you would have heard me say, and I would say in time for Christmas, well, and that was to take the pressure off the timing, because as you would have seen, the media was, and understandably, and the families also were enormous pressure on the rescue teams to go faster. They were saying, you haven't rescued them. We're at day 10. You've failed. And of course, I was saying, no, we haven't rescued them yet. Everybody's fine. We're doing this carefully. Please celebrate the success. We're still doing a rescue. We still don't have a disaster, and it's okay. And that was the hardest thing, was to be constantly reminding everybody and reassuring everybody that we were dealing with a successful operation, even if we were being criticised for being slow. Because fast would have, definitely would have resulted in a very different outcome to what we have. So for me, this is the perfect outcome. And if we'd have gone fast, I don't know where on the scale of disasters we would have been, but we would have been on the disaster scale, and we would have been dealing with the more typical, let's count the survivors maybe. So that's what I think was most difficult, keeping that. It's almost like, it's like keeping the whole operation in the zone, and the zone was 41 men home safe, no one injured. Let's not stress about the timing zone, knowing that the avalanche is still happening, knowing that we've got data showing the mountain is moving, knowing that at any moment it could become catastrophic, but being calm about it. That's the hardest part, I think.
Okay. So you had to ensure the safety of both the workers as well as the rescuers, given the condition there.
Yeah.
And the key was to remain calm.
Yeah. And so for me, I was asked, how did I feel once I knew the 41 people were out? And my answer is, well, I had to check to make sure no one had been hurt, because also all the rescue teams were my friends. And I mean that genuinely my friends. Like, I would, go talk to them. How are you? How are you feeling? Now, and as you would expect, we were briefing them on what they had to do when they got to the other side. There was the risk of a collapse on the other side while the rescue was going on. So that's a risk to them. And so talking to them about what to look out for. If they see, for example, the roof is starting to collapse, which way to run, because what we wanted them to do was to not run to the pipe, because that was the dangerous area. Really, they had to run away, and we'd stockpiled food in there. So if there'd been a collapse, we knew they had at least 2 or 3 weeks more food, and we'd promised everybody that we'd keep coming for them. So even if we lost contact, they should prepare for at least 2 or 3 weeks not to see us, but we'll be there. We're coming to get them, and please no one get hurt. So I needed to know, and I wanted to know that all the rescuers were fine, as did everybody, as did the President's team, Uttarakhand team, Army, the rescue guys. Oh, that was really important. No one hurt, which we got. Miracle number 5. We got that as well. Okay. So I'm happy about that. Then I was content when I knew that that the rescuers and the people to be rescued were okay.
Now, how do you think such a disaster can be prevented in the future? such an incident?
Yeah, well, that's a really good question because I'm getting too old to do this on a regular basis. Like, I'm nearly 60. I can't keep coming over to help my friends to get their kids out of tunnels if they keep collapsing. And I'm absolutely convinced, like 100% sure, not 99, like 100% sure, there's no problem building tunnels in this area so long as we just get more humble about it and make sure that our support, what we call in engineering, the support class, the way in which we build the tunnel actually responds to the ground conditions that we encounter. And I think the project got a little surprised by the way the ground was behaving. And in the future, I think and in fact, I'm sure it's being done now. Well, I mean, I know it's being done now, that there's a review undertaken about how things had been done in the past so that we make sure this doesn't happen again. And I think there's also a review going on of all the current projects to make sure they're not doing anything similar to what happened here. Because it's the ground overwhelmed the support. And as engineers, we can support this type of ground quite happily, but for whatever reason, it wasn't supported well enough in this particular tunnel in this location. So I'm sure that will be fixed straight away.
Now, Professor, on a personal front, during the rescue ops, we saw you praying at a temple and your prayers were certainly answered. So can you tell us something about your spiritual experience in India?
So I'm a very private person, so I'll tell you a little. Firstly, before I even got there, I had a really good feeling about this rescue mission. And so, in a sense, that's a spiritual answer because that's not the answer of a professor of engineering, right? Professor of engineering, he should say, I'd estimated at 0.73, 0.6% that we're going to be successful. I had a good feeling about this. I don't normally get a good feeling about rescues. Normally, it's quite a depressing feeling that I get. So I was off to a good start. For some reason, I was actually feeling pretty good about what I had to do, but I also had an enormous sense of burden that I had to play my role and that I was playing an important role. And so is that a spiritual thing? I don't know. I leave that for you to decide. It's certainly an unusual feeling for me to have that. Like I just felt like this was my job. And so long as I could work honorably and I could discharge my professional duties and work diligently, and that we all could work in that way, that we were going to get an amazing result. But I had no basis for that other than a feeling. When I was on my way, because it took several days, because a couple of days, I was stuck anyway in some other mountains doing something else. I started researching the area, and I'd already was a little familiar with Uttarakhand and this area of the gods, and I'd done many years ago given some advice on Terry Hydro, so I'd already had some of my Brahmin friends dunk me in the Ganga, and so I'd already a decade or more been introduced to the area, so I knew it was special. And then I read about the local people being convinced that part of the reason this event had happened was because their little temple at the portal for the tunnel had been demolished. And then I spoke to a number of my Hindu friends about the significance of the area I was going to, and they also explained to me that this was the most significant religious area for the Hindu people. And also I knew that the purpose of the tunnel was to link sacred Hindu sites.
Yes, the child project.
Yeah. there's a bit of a common theme here, isn't there? Like if I'm looking at it, I'm like, hang on, I'm going to the most religiously significant area in the world for the two people. I'm going to a place where a little temple's been demolished outside a tunnel. I've got 40, at that stage, 40 people, wasn't 41. Initially it was 40, but 40 people. Actually, I suppose that's miracle number one. How do 40 men give birth to one extra person? I don't quite know how you go from 40 to 41. Maybe that's miracle number one. I joke about that. And I don't know how it was that it went from 40 to 41, but anyway, it did early up. And I suspect everyone was just so happy to be alive. They just hadn't done a proper head count on their side of the tunnel. Then when I got in the helicopter and was heading from Dehradun up into the Himalayas, I mean, that is just so beautiful. Like, I was looking out the window going, oh my goodness, look at that. That is so gorgeous. And then I went from the helipad. I wanted to go straight to the tunnel because I didn't want to muck around. I had to see what was happening. And I just felt this was a really special place. So I suppose that's a spiritual thing as well. And then it's my normal practice before I go underground to have a moment of reflection before I go underground. So in all projects around the world, well, I can't say all because I haven't been to all of them, but in every project I've ever been to, there's a little temple out the front, because in all cultures, that's what we do in the underground. Doesn't matter whether it's Hindu or Christian or Muslim or, actually, no, I think they do it a different way, but there's a certainly anyway, there's always a little place of reflection because we all, underground people are all quite humble because we have thousands of years of history of getting killed when we're building underground things. So we're quite humbled by them. We don't approach the underground as something that we're the master of. We approach the underground as something we do a deal with. So our engineering is like, got a mountain, we want to put a hole through it. We've got no way we can support a mountain in an engineering sense. The only way we can do it is to fool a mountain to let us dig a hole through it. So we have to build a special shape that distributes all the forces. So that's the engineering. And so, yeah, I reflected before I went in, that's going to the temple. That seemed to make a very big impact locally. Maybe I was the first or one of the few people who'd done that. I don't know, but it was the right thing to do. And then, of course, I always did that before I went in the tunnel. And whether I got some flowers on the way and I'd offer some flowers it was always flowers. Either I'd get flowers from the forest or I'd get flowers from the local village and then I'd share them. So I'd always have some flowers in my pocket, usually not a bouquet, normally the same colour. Sometimes I'd do a little bouquet, but I'd always split them. And then I'd give some at the temple and I'd always carry some with me. Just in case, someone was any doubt about who was outside the temple. It's like, I've got the same flowers here as outside the temple. Please spare me. I'm just trying to help. So anyway, so I'd always carry the flowers and always I do that. And of course I went over the mountain as well. There's a gentleman up on top of the pass where the little road goes across the mountain. He lives up there and I went and got a blessing from him. He's not, he has a special name. I can't remember, but he was just a really nice sort of guy who, I don't know, he gave me a blessing and has a little temple there. And then there's the big temple right at the top of the mountain, which I went to after the rescue just to say thank you with the rescue workers from Uttarakhand. So, yeah, that's a very long answer to a very simple question.
No, I think you gave us some very interesting trivia that you'd actually worked in Uttarakhand before. Like you were familiar with the terrain.
Yeah. And it fooled me before. So with Terry Hydro, I remember going into I think it was one of the pump houses and it was collapsing. This is a long time ago. This was just after the Russians had left because they were involved in the original construction. And so I was in what would have been the Russian construction camp up on Terry Hydro. The engineers were local engineers, I'd say the Brahmin guy was a Brahmin, and he's like, "Hey, I'll take you up to the river and I'll give you a blessing." I'm like, "No worries." So I remember closing my ears and closing my nose and thinking, "Oh my goodness, what happens now? I'm now getting a blessing in the Ganga, you know." Anyway, so yes, I'd done that years before, so I was a bit sensitized to the environment. But on Terry, I also learned how incredibly complicated the ground was, because I remember giving my advice and my Indian friend saying to me, so I wasn't a professor then, I was just a young, didn't have the grey, just a younger fella. And I went, "I don't know." And they were like, "You don't know?" And I'm like, "I've never seen anything like this before," because I hadn't. So I was quite humbled originally with the Terry project at what I saw. And maybe they liked the fact that I was really honest, because instead of making up some answer, that pretending I was really clever, instead I just said, "I've never seen anything quite like this." So I think that was actually useful advice, because it made them feel confident that their reason that it was difficult was because it was really difficult. So yeah, that's a bit of trivia in the background as well.
Now, finally, you've become a hero in India as well as in your home country, Australia. So, do you have any message for your Indian fans?
Well, firstly, I'm normally not known at all, so I'm very much the bashful hero. So
You were
if I'm a
acknowledged by the Australian Prime Minister.
yeah, so that
Welcome at the airport.
yeah, so I'm just going to tell you a secret, right? This is like the secret. When I saw that, seriously, I thought maybe I've been involved in a car accident or something, and I'm having like a reaction to an anesthetic, because, you know, sometimes you have medicine and then you have bad dreams and things. And I was looking at my Prime Minister stopping Parliament and talking about me. And I'm like, no one ever talks about me. Normally my work is completely anonymous. And then what was even more amazing was the leader of the main opposition party. He got up and said something really nice. And so in my head, I was like, clearly I'm having a dream. There is no way that in Australian politics, our Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition would agree that I'm a nice guy. No, this is
another miracle.
Yeah. And so for me, I was looking at this and I thought, this is proof that I'm obviously maybe on drugs. Like maybe I've had a car crash. I really seriously thought maybe I've had a car crash or something, and I'm in the middle of an operation and they've given me some drugs and I'm having a hallucination thing, because in my mind, I've just been flying in a helicopter up to the Himalayas. I've been praying at a temple. There's been a miracle rescue. I've been sleeping in a tent with the army. I've been hanging out with the Prime Minister's team. I've been, and now my Prime Minister is saying nice things about me, and the leader of the opposition. Thought, I'm obviously having a weird dream. It can't be true, because it's not just that one thing has happened, which sounds completely crazy. It's so many things. Like, it's as if none of this could be possible, because it shouldn't have happened. Normally you don't rescue 41 people. Normally normally people get hurt. Normally I'm involved trying to find bodies. Normally I'm trying to learn the lesson so we don't kill people again. And now I saw little kids getting dressed up like me with little beards like mine and a little yellow hat, and like little, you got a choice between Darth Vader, I don't know, Superman, Spider-Man, and Arnold. Really? No, this can't be true. This is so. I seriously thought I must be imagining it. So I'm quite humbled by it, but I also think it's a really, really, really huge opportunity for nice people. And I am bold enough to say that I just try and be nice, right? Like, I came to India to help my friends. It was that simple. My friend rings me and says he needs some help, so I come. That's what That's what nice people do, you know. And now I'm famous for being nice. That is so good. That should be I'm happy if that's the case, and this isn't a dream sequence, and I really aren't on drugs, and I'm not having some adverse reaction to an anesthetic. If this is really true, then this is what the 21st century should look like. It should look like people between different countries helping each other. And it should be about someone from another country coming to help you because your kids are stuck in a tunnel. And it should be about celebrating how we saved lives. And that's a world I want to live in. And that's a world that I want my kids to live in. And I'm so convinced that most of us are like that. Like, I don't meet horrible people normally. Like, all the people I work with are really nice. So I don't understand how the world can do all these horrible things to each other. And yet that's what I normally read about. And it makes me really sad, because I look at it and I think, where are all these horrible people? Where do they live? Because I don't know them. I can't actually identify in my friend group anyone who I think's horrible, and yet I see all these horrible things happening. Why? Why are people behaving like this? And I think the answer is because if someone hurts someone that you love, then I think you want to hurt them. So you get into this spiral, because I'm not all forgiving. Like, if someone hurts my wife or my kids on purpose, I'm going to be pretty upset, and probably I'm going to want to hurt them. So I'm not some angel. I'm just human, you know. And so I can understand how people get into this spiral of hatred. So I get it. I can understand that. But I think it's time that nice people just said, that's enough of that. And how about we stop that? And how about we help one another? And, you know, if someone needs a hand, you literally just put your hand out. It's not hard. And I often get criticised for being, and through my life I've often been criticised for being soft, for example. And I don't think I'm soft. I think I'm compassionate. And compassionate isn't easy. In fact, it's easier to be tough. It's easier to be horrible. It's easy to be rude. It's easy to have an explanation for why you don't do something. I mean, I could have easily said to my friends in India, "Oh, sorry, I can't come, I'm busy," because I was busy. I was really busy. But instead, I dropped everything, and I mean everything, and I just rushed to help. That's what nice people will do? So I think there's an opportunity for the world, albeit not a common example, to stop and reflect and go, 2024, I'm going to try and be a little bit nice. I know it sounds a little odd. I just that doesn't have to be more complicated than that. Instead of pushing in front of someone, like, maybe just let them go ahead. Or, sometimes if someone's begging for money, instead of just pretending they're not there, just catch their eye and just give them something. In part, just to acknowledge that they're human, like, just in part to go, hey, you're not forgotten. I don't know your story, but just, I don't see that as weak. I see that as compassionate. I don't know. I think maybe 2024, that would be my message for 2024. It's like, just even a little bit, everyone, just be a little bit nice, because if you are just a little bit nice, if we're all a little bit nicer, you can do miracles. Because I think that's what we just did.
That's a very good message. And I think being nice can be a good resolution, New Year resolution for a lot of people. So that will be all from my side, Arnold. Thank you for speaking.
Pleasure.